When I was growing up, I never really was that big into fighting games. If it wasn't Smash Brothers, I usually never even gave it a second glance. My issue came down to me being way too casual to understand the complex rotations and button presses to even perform something as simple as taking the trash out. Hell, it probably would be easier to fight someone in real life than to pull off whatever the hell this is. So the majority of my time playing was me never pulling off combos and losing. I did get to a point with some fighting games that if I mashed certain ways, the move I would want usually came out. So in a way, it's kind of like strategic button mashing, maybe. That's not to say I didn't have some fighting games I did actively play, like Skullgirls, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, and
Dengeki Bunko Fighting Climax.
Yeah, I had a Sword Art Online era. But one I love to death and will always play even if I'm trash is none other than
Marvel vs. Capcom 2 New Age of Heroes.
Pizza time.
Now, I think I can speak for the majority of people and say how amazing this creation from Capcom is. Even if it seems to just reuse sprites from the previous fighting endeavors, I would never say that takes away from the charm of being able to play as Mega Man, Roll, or Spider-Man on the same team, duking it out against Venom, Dr. Doom, and Jill Valentine. I have a very faint memory of being a super young child and watching my brother play this at arcades with other kids. For the longest time, I assumed this was something my mind made up till I learned, oh yeah, this is a real game. The fact Marvel vs. Capcom 2 has so many characters to pick from, with some I still don't know who they even are, like this guy or this monkey girl or these characters from Pocket Fighters. Yeah, Pocket Fighters, you know, the chibi Street Fighter clone. Wait, they're not from Pocket Fighters? I'm just pretending to talk to someone else for the segue? $20 is $20. Yeah, so it turns out I always assumed these two characters were from Street Fighter because of the single title I played a lot growing up. I even talked about it for a bit in my aesthetics and gaming video that no one watched. And I mean, can you really blame me? I never saw them in anything else besides Marvel vs. Capcom and Pocket Fighters, so it was very easy to assume these were just Street Fighter casts. But upon doing research, I learned about a very unique and horror-themed fighting title from Capcom, so because we're doing 61 Days of Spook, I thought it would be fun to cover the whole series as it's 5 games of horror-themed fighting. Without further ado, let's dive into the world of Vampire Hunter / Savior or Darkstalkers for the people in the land of the free. Before we start, I am in no real way qualified enough to talk about the competitive side of things or getting nitty-gritty with the fighting mechanics besides a surface-level look. I am more making this to talk about what I like and the aesthetics of the series. If you're wanting someone to go full on the actual fighting side to this, there's plenty of videos that do that better than I ever could. I will still talk about the fighting mechanics here and there, but keep in mind, I'm a casual, so this is a deep dive from that perspective, full and through. So if I say something that's wrong or doesn't make any sense, please feel free to correct me in the comments, as I would rather have someone who knows what they're talking about when it comes to the mechanics side give their take if I am wrong, as I want these videos to still be informative at the very least. Now, Darkstalkers 1 was created from the groundwork done on Street Fighter 2 Turbo. If you spend even 5 minutes with this, the similarities are quite easy to notice. From the gradient text, how you travel the globe to fight each member of the cast, a lot of their animations and attacks function pretty similar to other Street Fighter characters. That's not to say Darkstalkers didn't bring some new additions of its own, from being able to block in the air, a reworked special meter system that forces the player to prioritize finding a good use for your powerful moves, with it now draining if you don't take advantage of using it. If you want a good example that I think everyone will understand, think of it like Cloud's limit meter in Ultimate. I would easily argue the one thing that sets us apart from Street Fighter is how much Darkstalkers prioritizes aggression in honing in on your opponent, while making sure they don't have any time to react, with later games really boosting this idea to the max. This was thanks to Capcom's newest creation, the CPS2 arcade board. This would go on to be the second title release for it after Street Fighter 2 Turbo hit arcades. The devs envisioned a new IP for their next project as they saw the potential this would bring and wanted to cash in on it, which I mean is a good move on Capcom, because I was over here starting to think we were going to get like 6 different versions of Street Fighter 2 at this rate. Wait, 6 versions did happen for Street Fighter 2? Do I want to make another $20? Now, it seems no one really knows for sure if this is the true origins of Darkstalkers, but from what I found, it said Akira Yasuda had one of his worker buddies go, what if instead of people, They were all just Blanca. They also found it to be easier to make monsters be the main gimmick since they originally wanted to use famous established ones to help save on creating new characters from scratch. Fanamizu, the producer, talked about in an interview how at first they were going to go with classic yokai creatures, but felt people in the West would be turned off since yokai aren't a common thing for us. The only yokai creature that I found that they talked about making for the game was a Nurikabe yokai. They felt it would be pretty easy to implement since these guys are known to guard whatever they stand in front of, having them in a perpetual guard state at all times, with some others being talked about like an invisible man with only gloves able to be seen by the player or a Japanese salaryman. The biggest goal in mind when creating them was always considering how the cast would attack, with them wanting to implement things that would shock or surprise the player, like projectiles coming from above or how vastly different it feels to play as each member. In most other fighting games, all the roster will follow these same fundamentals, with usually their specials and combos being what sets them apart. But in Darkstalkers, some characters are able to hover, some have double jumps, and then you have ones that can dash around with boosters. This creates a feeling that each playable fighter is quite unique, but comes with them all having their own learning curve, as you're not just experimenting with the game's mechanics, but said character mechanical depth as well. While I did say Darkstalkers has a very Street Fighter 2 feel to it, since it oozes SF2 in its DNA, they were able to really make the cast stand out above anything seen before thanks to the glorious and detailed sprite sheets, allowing the great coloring to pop on screen as they move and duke it out on these just as breathtaking 2D stages. You would think with all these detailed works going into the project, the dev teams probably worked twice as hard to make them come to life. But turns out it was actually way easier to develop in this regard, which is why they got away with so many poppy and fun motions for the characters, with them going on to say the Hanna-Barbera animations were a big part of the inspiration. They said by having the art team go into drawing with a more simplified workflow, they didn't have to go back and fix inconsistencies with shading or line work like they did with SF2. So while Darkstalkers is said to have 4 times the amount of animated sprites, they spent more time thinking of the moves over actually implementing them. I really like as well that it was thanks to the overseas staff members why we even got lore for each fighter, since the Japanese developers didn't seem to care much for that aspect, as they were more focused on the designs. So names and lore ideas were influenced thanks to us. When it finally was released, the game did quite well in arcades, and even from Yoshiki Okamoto, he stated it was the best-selling fighter in arcades that year with over 24,000 units sold. But even then, the CEO at the time told him that Darkstalkers was a failure since it didn't reach the highs of the Street Fighter series. Just goes to show you, Capcom even back then still found some way to bitch and moan about successful ideas while blaming the fans. Mega Man Legends 3, baby, remember what they took from us. Now, as soon as you even glance over at Darkstalkers 1, the cinematic intro should be enough to sell you on trying it out alone, with lightning shooting down as the silhouettes of the title fades into view, with a panning shot of all the playable rosters lined up together, with the last one being this ominous man in front of a blood moon. As the title screen finally greets us after such a bombastic intro, one thing should be easy to notice. Unlike most energetic fighting game openings with their iconic music that gets you ready to rumble before playing, we just hear silence, with the only thing coming from the speakers is a loud bell chime, and then back to silence. It's really crazy to think about how different this really is compared to all the wacky in-your-face advertising that they did back in the 90s, and here's this just being silent and to itself. But all that fear and ambience is broken when you press start and see the character select. And if this doesn't scream Street Fighter 2 ROM hack, I don't know what else would. We have 10 characters to try out, first up being Dimitri. He's pretty much the counterpart for Ryu, as he has similar moves like your Hadokens and whatever else Ryu likes to scream out. This is considered the main mascot for the series, and looking at his design, I love it, but also find it so goofy. On one hand, he gives off a very intimidating stare and stance. Like, look at him in this character sketch. Oh my god, man means some business. But then his outfit just loses all that fear factor. But I really think his look aids to the charm Darkstalkers wanted to hit, having a horror-themed vibe with lighthearted, wacky moments seen with the characters. The endings for them, however, they get pretty dark, I'm not gonna lie. Looking at the beta art for Dimitri, while scarier in some aspects, I can say it's a massive downgrade compared to what we did go with. But man, I'll be real with you, the aura that Dimitri gives off is why he's for sure in my top 3 favorite for the game. Talbane is our next guy, and if you're a furry, he's probably your favorite, able to dash around in all directions, really giving off Bayonetta vibes from Smash. I even like while he does stand on his hind legs, he moves on all fours. It's a nice touch to his wolf aspect of him and helps him come off less like a dude and more like an actual ferocious beast. Plus, learning he only fights because he realized he was part werewolf and was shunned by human society with the hopes that if he trained hard enough, he could break the curse by pushing his physical strength and mind to the max. It really makes you want to root for this furry dude. But looking at his design, it's quite basic, just a wolf with pants. Even the devs said before, Talbane never seemed like a fan favorite. I'm sure this design choice made him way easier to animate, however. Looking at the beta art, this one with a skull on his arm looks so cool it made me wish this was the final design we got, but I bet you it would have been a bitch to animate. Victor is next, and he's probably a reworked idea to when they wanted to use already established monsters for their cast, with him resembling the Frankenstein monster. He's your second grappler character with the cool ability to make all of his attacks have electric properties to them, giving a really neat callback of him having to be electrified to become alive. But I don't know who was in charge of this, but they gave him a move where he clenches you between his ass cheeks, and I could have gone my whole life without that. I thought this was a horror game, guys, not a gooner game. Stellar Blade fans, where you guys at? Because the ass is literally right here. As for his look, I honestly think it's my second favorite. Even though I don't play this character, I just feel it fits the role of monster. Plus, I always seem to gravitate to heavy character designs usually, even though he's only slow because of the sheer gravity-defying dump truck of an ass on him. His beta drawings seem to really hit more on the electric vibe, with two of them turning the monster into a full robot, and the other being half and half. Final one is probably the most goofy creation, as he seems to have an electric box on his back or a lamp. It's kind of hard to tell. Lord Raptor is here, and this is my favorite design out of everyone in the cast. He's a wisecracking zombie creature who is apparently very passionate about basketball and music, which makes sense when he has a super that turns your opponent into a ball and he dunks you into a hoop. Very neat. But man, are his animations flashy, using everything from chainsaws, his own ribs, blades, you name it. It's crazy just how insane this guy is to watch move around and really own the stage. He also made me remember how companies, if they needed to make sure you knew someone was British, they always without fail had the flag on them somewhere, making Americans now look like amateurs for who can wear the flag the most. As for the beta designs, goddamn, they're all trash. Nothing can beat this peak design British rock star. Finally, we have Morgan, someone I'm sure all of us have looked up on R34 at least once. She's the obvious succubus creature of the series, and Capcom surely lets you know she's here for sex appeal. So for an example, there's a whole book they released featuring all the history and drawings for Darkstalkers, and you'd be hard pressed to not find at least one or two images of her naked. And I mean, you have a succubus, might as well make her do succubus things. Her color scheme with the green hair shining through the sea of purples is a nice touch. And then going to her outfit having the faint bat prints on her leggings and wings on her head and body. Man, they really nailed this design, as it seems so many succubus characters nowadays have some inspiration from her in their DNA. She actually had a good amount of designs that went unused, one where she's buffed the fuck up, some more going into the bat motif she has, with this blue hair design standing out the most as she lacks any of these succubus traits. Honestly though, just like our skeleton friend, I don't think you can improve on this design anymore. It, however, didn't stop a crossover with Queen's Blade from trying, so there's that, I guess. Now, here's someone I recognize from Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and never knew he was from this series either. I always assumed him and Amingo were from the same game, and then I learned that Amingo debuted in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, so technically no one knows where he's even supposed to be from. Arcaris is the weirdest character I've ever played in a fighting game. His moves are downright crazy. I sadly can't play as him because I just suck, so there's that. But the fact they managed to make a huge looking guy be the floatiest character out of everyone is a testament to what they set out to do when it came to creating something that breaks the player's expectations of how something should work. While he's never my go-to choice even in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, I really can't deny how much he works for a floaty heavy character. And I'm sure there's someone out there who fell in love with his weird hitboxes and attacks and has been an Arcaris fan ever since. His betas seemed to try taking a different approach at one point. Instead of being a walking coffin, they were going to have him out just as a normal mummy dude. Thankfully, I feel this was a smart idea to scrap it, as it made him way more recognizable, and having 3 heavies in the game makes the other 2 stand out even more. It's Felicia time, and if you're a furry, you probably have also looked her up on R34 at least once. Felicia is someone I actually used a lot in Pocket Fighter because I love she could turn into Mega Man in one of her attacks. Now that I'm finally able to experience the game that she's from, it's really interesting to say the least. Now, I wish I could play as Felicia since I enjoy the idea of rolling around mixed with fast attacks that can pressure an opponent if not careful. This makes her stand out to me over some of the other characters in the cast. Her beta artwork seems to just match a lot of the 80s furry art. If anything, reminds me of the two monster women from that Scooby-Doo movie. On to the last three characters, as we have Bishamon, who became cursed by evil armor after he forced the shopkeeper who was selling it to let him have it. With no memory of doing this, he was confused. One day, however, he decided to wear it and lost all of his humanity into the dark curse the armor brought. Now, for how he fights, he's able to possess your opponents with these flames that fly around him, setting up for combos, but God forbid if I can ever pull it off. He's probably my worst character to play as. Now, looking at his beta art, we can see they still wanted to keep the armor idea in mind, with some even having him full-on headless. I just wish I was better when it comes to using him, but to say the weeb in me doesn't scream in sheer joy to see a haunted samurai armor, I would be lying. Allbath is next. Even though a Fishman isn't my favorite to the surprise of a few people, that's not to say I don't love him in the way he fights. He straight up has a dive kick, a bubble that traps people, gas that can stun, which even comes out of his chest area. Very gross, but interesting. I feel this was a character the devs really had a lot of fun making, even going into his beta art with one of them being a straight up fish head creature instead of a man. And I can see why a lot of people really prefer him over the other people in the cast. Lastly, we finally have my actual favorite character. While not my number one for design, he makes up for it in how he's just an overall cute and fun fighter to throw hands with. And he's a family man with this artwork where he stores the baby Sasquatches in his mouth. Are you really gonna look at me and tell me he's not the best thing to grace your eyes? Sasquatch is his name, and the second grapple character in the game is his plant. I again never really like heavy characters besides a very select few, and after spending some time trying him out, he's one of the ones I will always have a soft spot to pick up and play as. And I'm so glad they went with his white fur appearance instead of the one-eyed Cyclops or what appears to be a monkey look fitting the usual depiction of a Bigfoot. And if after all this you're still not sold why Sasquatch is the bee's knees, he's the only one who had 2 mobile games. Now diving into Darkstalkers 1, we have our usual modes expected like training, versus, and arcade. Now look, I'm a casual at fighters, there's no doubt about it, but man, this is one of the hardest fighters I've touched in so long. The AI are insanely good at reading you, predicting your movements, and overall just being fucking annoying. I know there's going to be someone out there who can watch my gameplay right now and tell me why I'm losing and what I'm doing wrong, but regardless, I'm looking at these from a more casual aspect, and as a grumpy casual, fuck, this game is difficult. And while playing, I did find myself a lot just wanting to try out Street Fighter 2 because that's how this game felt to me. And it probably didn't help that I actually had experience with the third entry of the series, so it made me realize how dated the gameplay came off as. But the question is Darkstalkers 1 bad? And the answer is no, far from it. In fact, I see why this did so well. Even while getting curb stomped every match, watching these beautiful animations and stages hit my irises kept me engaged. For instance, the one that Felicia's from is probably my favorite, as all the neon lights engulf the area around you, with even some early art of this map featuring the word sex cat on the billboard. Yeah, don't tell Shane Dawson about that one, please. I mean, look at this one. It has a rainbow fountain just flashing in the back with the colors actually reflecting off these statues that, oh yeah, that's right. These stages have breakable environments that actually affect the map in some way. With London as an example, having this box that can be smashed, making red paste or whatever this is supposed to be cover the ground. Or again, back to the USA stage, these light pillars are smashable, and when destroyed, it becomes darker around it. While I guess now it's not as impressive, seeing it done back then though really just blew me away. The foundation is here for sure, and it's strong enough to say that Darkstalkers 1 still has quite the charm even if janky to really play anything past a, oh cool, this is where it started. I can very much see why someone going into an arcade and seeing this in the back would be instantly drawn to it. But now we can move on to the second title in the series, Vampire Hunter. Vampire Hunter right from the start is such a massive improvement from the first game. From movement being faster, AI not being as cheap as they made sure to make them easier to help casual players learn the inputs and mechanics, chain combos are now a lot easier to perform, and for those who hate holding back to block, you have an auto block mode that allows the player to defend incoming attacks if not hitting any inputs. Most comp players will never use it, and even I myself try not to, but hey, it's there if you want it to be. I can also say the color work got a lot more poppy and saturated this time around, making the playable fighters stand out better in dark environments. There's even this one palette called Goki colors. By holding light punch and medium kick, you get these dark versions of the characters. The original vision behind them was to make them full-on clones with adapted moves to fit the dark motif, but this was scrapped due to time restraints. Now there's only one that Funamizu talked about, and this was the Goki version of Sasquatch, where he was intended to have black fur and Geta sandals with a top knotted shirt. This was apparently the only way they could make him appear evil. Now mechanically, the biggest change is now your special meter will fill more than once, with it not draining anymore if not used. The reason for multiple bars is how special attacks are handled this time around, with one of them being called ES Specials. This can grant the player powerful versions of pre-existing attacks, with some even changing how many hits a move does or bigger damage, with the other one being the EX Special. And think of these as your supers since they take a whole bar to use and are just heavy hitting moves. Now besides mechanic changes and better looking sprite work, this game is around the same as the last one. Even the character endings are all similar. This makes sense when you realize they only had 5 months to develop it. But even with that strict deadline, there are still some new additions like these 2 boss characters from the previous title I never made it to since I suck. Those being Phobos and Pyron. Phobos is so cool, but like our mommy friend, he's very strange to play as for me. While he does hit hard with his giant ice beams and beefy hitboxes, the floating in the air makes it super difficult for me to really control well enough. When it comes to his design, it's supposed to be based off ancient figures called Dogu, with the face helping make that comparison. However, when you look at his beta art, they seem to always want the robotic look to be a thing, which they ended up settling on the big hulky design we see today. Pyron is literally a giant ball of fire or plasma. He's also evil and wants to take over the planets. As for playing as him, he has some great moves I like, but he's just very weird to control and doesn't fit my playstyle. I'm also sure these 2 boss characters were more than likely toned down from the last game to not be broken, but I wouldn't know though. Thanks, Morgan!
I'm gonna report you.
I will say though, I really wish we got this design of him. This right here feels like an actual threat. A skull with flames shooting out from his head, hiding the top half. Maybe they wanted to avoid making him come off as some dude, but come on, man. This one is so much better. Now, we did get 2 new characters never before seen, with one of them being the girl I'm familiar with from Pocket Fighter and Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Funny enough, because of the short dev time, it was believed that no new characters would make it in, but Funamizu said how the design team didn't want to push out the same game with no new additions, since the idea was they wanted returning players to view this as a new game in the series and not a sequel. So because of their willpower and drive, they got 2 characters added that weren't even going to make it in the first place. Now the reason why they justify the name change comes from them having 2 additional characters be vampire hunters, with their goal being to take out all the other Darkstalker fighters. Which now brings us to Donovan. He's a Dhampir, which is part vampire, part human. They believe just having some normal dude trying to take out bone-piercing zombies or big-titted succubus would be unrealistic. Murata, the person who came up with the design for Donovan, felt that alone still wasn't enough to justify him being here fighting. They decided to give him a gigantic demon sword to help push his power level to the max. Remember, big sword will always make your character seem like a threat. Donovan was one of the few characters that took a lot of inspiration from Capcom USA, even down to his name. They allowed Capcom USA to give input since they were really trying to have Donovan appear as a Western gunman vibe. And I'll be real with you, I don't see that at all. I never would have made that correlation if I didn't read it. But hey, he's the first Indian fighter in the series, which you can tell because the artist included a curry dish whenever he gets transformed by Ankaris' attack. When Funamizu questioned why the graphic artist used a curry dish, his reply was, well, he's Indian. I'm not even joking, this is a real story. Now for the newest female, we have Lele, or whatever name they want to call her, since this series is known for different names for the same character. Now, funny enough, Murata's vision for these 2 was to have one character facing a heavy burden and trying his best to finally be free of it. The other one needed to have a pussy. Lele is based off Jiangxi, which are Chinese hopping vampires. And if you didn't know this, Kingdom Hearts 2 has an enemy that is one of these in the Land of the Dragons. The official Chinese world of KH, so cool little fact if you didn't know that. Lele has one of my favorite idle animations out of everyone. It's cool enough to catch your attention when you see it, but it's lame enough to get the cops called if you did this outside your local gas station. The reason why her name is what it is comes from the fact it's a play on the word Ray repeated twice. It was supposed to be a nickname during development but ended up sticking. Now Lele's battle intro will always have a girl named Lin Lin who summons her to fight. The original intention was to have both characters fight as a duo, but they settled on her controlling Lele with a Ofuda seen in her starting match intro. Now, while this game is basically the first one with mechanical changes and new characters, you can really tell the dark themes they tried to reach in Darkstalkers 1 were pushed out. Gone are the days of a single bell chime to now have music that sounds like it belongs in a shitposting group. But to say if this is bad or not really comes down to personal preference. I, as a casual fighting game enjoyer, love this one a lot more since I can actually pick it up and play without feeling like I'm just trash. While, yes, I'm still horrible at Darkstalkers, but the fact it makes me feel like I'm learning and improving is a testament to just how in tune the devs were with allowing a place for the new players while leaving an area for the returning players to feel just at home. Morgan still fucking sucks to fight in this though. Fucking Christ, dude, I hate this character. Now, you want to talk about style, flair, aesthetics, then look no further than Darkstalkers 3. I feel this intro does a good job at being flashy while introducing us to some of the new characters we will cover. Plus, Morgan is naked again. What's not to love? Booting into DS3, the new and improved aesthetics compared to the last game can be seen right away. While Darkstalkers 2 had a more black and minimalistic character selection, DS3's character screen wants you to cream, and I mean fucking cream. Seeing this cool animation flow into the CSS layout with the purple filling the back, as the character portraits on the sides never look so good. I really like as well, it's all presented on a gravestone, still helping sell the horror visuals I felt the last game started to move away from. Again, I can't state how much of a visual overhaul Darkstalkers 3 has gotten since the first game. The colors are more poppy and saturated. Even with these stages, you can really see just how much passion and color theory went into these. But the visuals aren't the only thing that's changed. Given the fact the dev time was 2 years, they wanted to make sure players got something so drastic and new, people would feel it was worth the wait. Right off the bat, things probably seem pretty close to how it was before while in a match, with these special meters and health bars being accounted for. But one thing's off, the health bar seems to flash with each hit I take or deal to my opponent. And the white part regenerates? Yeah, you want to talk about maxing out the aggression and rewarding aggressive play? Darkstalkers 3 does this beautifully. Battles this time around are quite frantic and can end really fast if you know what you're doing. So to balance this and make fights feel fair for both sides, you can now regain health as long as you're not attacking or blocking hits, with the white part showing what health is recoverable. This helps even a player who wants to go on the defensive not just be shit out of luck, as blocking into throws can be way more viable this time around since you still heal during their animation. And don't worry, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 fans, we finally have guard pushing. But the way it's implemented here is quite strange, as you need to hit a series of random inputs for a chance to have the guard push occur, with 3 inputs at once usually being the sweet spot for most players, since the window of activation is very short. However, even if you press 3 random buttons in the time frame given, it's still less than 50%. While I find this to be a bit frustrating as a casual, competitive fans really seem to love it for the novelty and randomness it can present for fights. It helps create a fun, rewarding system for rushing down opponents while actively being able to engage beyond standing in place for defensive players. Even air combos got reworked, making aerial strings easier to achieve. Air blocking is still here, but now if you input anything while in the air, it stops you from protecting yourself till you land. Match pacing is improved and feels way faster. I can say right now, while I got my ass handed a lot, I never felt the overwhelming drag I got from Darkstalkers 1. Getting back into the battle never felt easier. Now, the one change I never thought I would love in any fighting game is the live system. Yeah, there's no rounds to go through, as each player is given 2 lives to work with. So whenever you knock someone out, whatever health you have will remain the same. This, with the healing mechanics, it makes a system to this day I haven't really seen before. I mean, look how fast it is to come back into the fight after your character dies. I really think this is also why I loved MVC2 so much, since the 3 characters basically are lives if you want to think about it. The greatest addition of all, and the trippiest to boot, is the Dark Force system. Upon activating this, you can see the screen fill with a bunch of rainbow colors. During this time, players can activate special moves or movement options, with some being able to fly, others getting clones to multi-hit. You name it, someone probably has it. What's good about this mode is any damage inflicted becomes red health, meaning there's no way to take the hits and then recover afterwards. Now, with that being said, not all Dark Forces are created equally, as some really will benefit the character to the point it's a requirement to try getting this off as much as possible, while others, they just kinda either don't get a boost at all that much or become slightly worse. Now, casually, it probably won't make a huge difference, but in comp matches, I'm sure using this with some of the cast who don't benefit as much can easily cost a match. And while all this is amazing and worthy of praise, there is one big flaw. In fact, 3 flaws. You see, 3 characters had to be omitted from the roster to save on memory since the arcade cabinets couldn't fit everyone. This means Donovan and the 2 boss characters had to get cut. But while some characters come and go, we did get 4 new fighters. Starting with my favorite design in the whole series is Jetta Doma, a Shinigami wearing attire that gives the same vibes as Dimitri but actually really cool. It's supposed to resemble a Japanese high school uniform apparently to help push the idea that him resurrecting all the time keeps him young. All this man wants to do is create a utopia by combining everyone's soul together, and I'll be the first in line for it. If Jetta asks for chicken wings at Sonic, you know he getting some motherfucking chicken wings, that's all I'm saying. If there's a character I wish I was good with, it's him, because he helps fill that edgy void in my heart of feeling like a badass death god, ripping and tearing my way through my opponents. I mean, his stage that he's from legit features a fetus in the background, which he fucking takes over. Like, Jesus, I can feel my fingers bleeding while typing from the edge right now. I need a band-aid or something, goddamn Jetta. But then he also features inflation fetish sprite work, so maybe not as cool. Or it is cooler, depending on who you ask. I guess real quick, I'll take a second to mention how these stages now have a lot more trippy imagery since I just showed the fetus map. This one right here with a train that has a mouth on it being driven by a skeleton is another cool one to point out. So it's quite fair to say that yeah, they really did hone back into the horror elements, even if it's a bit more on the trippy side of horror. Our second character we have here is actually someone I play a lot in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, so any footage I use of her, I actually do quite well. We have Boletta, or Baby Bonnie Hood in the West. She's a Red Riding Hood inspired fighter, with the twist that her cute demeanor is all a lie. You can notice this in her attacks, where she can be seen slicing open the opponent's throat, dropping bombs, firing missiles, and Molotov cocktails. Boletta is a Darkstalkers hunter, and apparently so good at it, even Jetta the fucking Death God said, "Oh shit, you're pretty good." He then throws her into the realm where the fetus god was. With her seeing this horrible environment she's now trapped at, by the way, instead of getting all sad or worried, she gets excited as she wants a new challenge. So who's gonna be the guy to comment I can fix her? However, she seems to be quite put together whenever she's not fighting, as she will spend time helping her grandma, with one of her specials showing her crying as a portrait of her appears, meaning I guess she does have a soft side through everything she shows. Overall, she's my favorite to play as since the bombs and missiles remind me of my time when I used Peacock a lot in Skullgirls. The second to last newest addition is QB. Can you guess what she's based off of? She's actually the queen of an insect humanoid race called the Soul Bees, where they all live on Jetta's family's land. They eat souls to survive and almost went extinct whenever Jetta was killed. However, even though QB can be seen fighting on her own, most of their brain functions are strictly to eat and reproduce, to the point they couldn't care what happens to the land around them as they just want to eat and fuck. Her attacks consist of her making honey bubbles and flying around whenever you activate her Dark Force mode, summon more bees, and also turn people into eggs by stinging them. And I guess a little cool fact for anyone who cares, QB and Baby Bonnie share the same voice actor. Now, it seems that QB is inspired by the demon called Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, as she and Beelzebub both rule over a specific insect and both want to eat 24/7, as the sin of gluttony is a big part of their motives. That being said, there were 2 other scrap insect characters, with one being a Black Widow and the other a fly who could make himself look handsome. So maybe the idea behind him was pushed over to QB, but no one really knows for sure. And I really like the ending because she ends up beating Jetta and then starts fucking so much that it ends up killing everything around them. Finally is our second succubus character, that being Lilith, which is the name given to the queen of the succubuses. She was apparently intended to be Morgan's half-angel sister, but seems that was scrapped for her to be of the same race. Her lore states that she was given a body to host as she's lost her real form a long time ago thanks to Jeddah. Because of him assisting her, she did whatever he requested by luring the Darkstalkers to him to hope that he could bring everyone inside the fetus to help have his plan come to life. It's never directly stated if Lilith was actually aware of the outcome this would bring, as in her eyes, she was just happy to be free and explore while hoping to one day have her real body back. Also, you ready for the weirdest fact about Lilith and Morgan? So apparently they're not like normal succubuses, as they don't need to drain energy from the opposite sex. Thanks to the wiki, I learned that they secrete a special liquid whenever they're physically or mentally stimulated, to the point they can only go around 2 days without said stimulation. They also have a very powerful effect in their body fluids, to the point their blood vessels dilate and their bodies get wet. Capcom really checked off any box they could think of. Now, as for Morgan and their relationship, that's still up for debate, as some say they're sisters, others say they're partners. It really depends on who you ask. And that's all the new characters. Seeing the new fighters, new lore and mechanics, you must be thinking, we have 2 more games to cover, right? How can Darkstalkers go up from here? Alright, real quick, come here. Yeah, go ahead, yeah, come over here. You want to know why we don't get Darkstalker games anymore? It wasn't because of the fans not loving the series, wasn't horrible art, music, or what have you. No, the blame can be solely put on Capcom, because you want to know what they decided to do for the last 2 games? Well, you see, just like how Street Fighter 2 has different versions that are considered updates, well, Darkstalkers did just that, as we got an update for Vampire Hunter, as they called it Vampire Hunter 2. But we also got Vampire Savior 2, an update of the first Savior game. These versions were only in Japan, and let me tell you, if you type Darkstalkers tournaments, no one uses either of these 2 updates. They're that fucking bad. These were implemented to help fix things that weren't issues and bring back the removed characters, while somehow removing other characters. Even has an empty spot just there. Why, dude? This looks so fucking gross. Like, cool, we got Donovan, the Ancient Robot, and Pyron, but like, why scrap the newest additions you just added and call this an update? Later console ports do give the player to have everyone in the same game, but they still use the garbage systems from the supposed sequels. Look, I'm in no way smart enough on the topic to really explain why these new mechanic changes suck, as there's lists that can do that job for me. But even as someone who's a casual, I can feel the difference, and it's bad. Now, if we want to go over to Vampire Savior 2, they also omitted characters which ended up being Talbane, Allbath, and fucking Sasquatch. This update name choice scheme they did is so bad, you still have people on Reddit asking to this day if these are new games or not. This update legit removes so much and gains so little. Like, I really hope you like Jeddah, as he's the only one with an ending now, with every arcade story final fight ending with him. The biggest change these ports add is a new coat of paint to everything and worse overall controls. The only reason I could see why you would pick these versions to try out is if you just really wanted to play a specific character with worse movement options. It's baffling, dude. But even with that sour spot on Darkstalkers history, and with the future seeming to be just putting the females in Gunnar gacha games, I can still look back at what Darkstalkers did right and remember it as the edgy horror Capcom fighter that really set itself apart from being a Street Fighter clone. And that's all I really needed to be. Thanks for watching, guys, and hopefully you enjoy the rest of the 61 Days of Spook. Oh, by the way, Morgan makes my pee-pee hard. Fuck you.